This
Gabriel
is
Torres
me!
had served as cultural liaison to the Thessar Empire for 4 years, navigating the complex diplomatic relationship between humanity and a species whose social structures were utterly alien to human understanding. The Thessar valued hierarchy, tradition, and emotional restraint above almost everything else, particularly for royalty, who were expected to maintain perfect composure and political calculation in all interactions. Queen Vaelis had been his primary contact throughout those 4 years, intelligent, strategic, and absolutely committed to her role as sovereign. Their relationship had been rigorously professional at first, but over time it had evolved into something neither could quite categorize. Mutual respect that deepened into genuine friendship, trust that exceeded diplomatic necessity, conversations that stretched late into station nights, and underneath it all, something unspoken that both carefully never acknowledged, feelings that had no place in the context of a Thessar queen and a human liaison. Thessar royalty didn't marry for love. They formed political alliances through calculated bonding arrangements. Vaelis had been bonded twice, both times to high-ranking Thessar nobles who brought strategic value. Both times had ended when the political calculus changed. Neither had involved anything resembling affection or personal choice. Gabriel had watched those political marriages from his position as liaison, maintaining appropriate professional distance while privately struggling with feelings he had no right to have. The diplomatic reception was meant to be routine, introduction of new Thessar nobility to the human delegation, formal exchanges of cultural courtesies. Gabriel stood in his usual position at the edge of the reception hall, present for protocol but not actively engaged. Then Vaelis entered with her formal entourage, her regal bearing commanding immediate attention. She moved through the reception with practiced grace, acknowledging nobles with the precise level of recognition each deserved. Vaelis approached the human delegation area, her expression carrying the neutral composure appropriate for formal diplomatic interaction. Ambassador Chen, Vaelis acknowledged the head of the human delegation with formal courtesy. Thank you for your attendance. Your delegation's presence honors the Thessar Empire. Standard diplomatic language Gabriel had heard dozens of times. Then Vaelis's gaze shifted to Gabriel, and something changed in her expression. Not much, just a flicker of something more personal beneath the royal composure. She moved toward him, her entourage following with obvious confusion about this deviation from expected protocol. Gabriel maintained appropriate formal posture, already calculating what diplomatic incident he might have accidentally caused. Vaelis stopped directly in front of him, her amber eyes holding his with an intensity that made Gabriel acutely aware that everyone in the reception hall was now watching. Gabriel, she said, using his personal name rather than his formal title, a breach of protocol that sent ripples of shock through the Thessar nobility present. I need to. She paused, clearly struggling with something. Her chief advisor, Lord Thuron, moved to intervene. Your Majesty, perhaps we should return to. Vaelis silenced him with a gesture, her attention remaining fixed on Gabriel. I've spent 4 years maintaining appropriate distance. 4 years performing the role expected of me. 4 years pretending that duty and political calculation were sufficient. She turned to face her entourage, her voice carrying across the now silent reception hall. This is my husband. The statement hit like a detonation. Thessar nobles erupted in shocked whispers. The human delegation looked equally stunned. Lord Thuron's expression suggested he just witnessed catastrophic breach of every protocol. And Gabriel stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what Vaelis had just declared publicly in a context that made the claim legally and culturally binding under Thessar law. Your Majesty, Lord Thuron said, his voice strained, you cannot simply declare a bonding without formal arrangement, without noble approval, without— I just did, Vaelis interrupted, her voice carrying absolute authority despite the tremor Gabriel could hear beneath it. Under Thessar law, A sovereign's public declaration of bonding is binding upon pronouncement. Gabriel Torres is my husband. This is no longer subject to debate or political negotiation. Then, to Gabriel's absolute shock, tears began streaming down Vaelis's face. The first genuine emotional display he'd ever witnessed from her in 4 years of close collaboration. The reception had devolved into controlled chaos. Thessar nobles conferring urgently, human diplomatic staff trying to understand the implications, and Lord Thuron attempting to manage a situation that had utterly escaped all protocols. Vaelis stood in the center of it all, tears still flowing despite her obvious attempts to restore composure, her hand finding Gabriel's in a gesture both desperate and determined. "Your Majesty," Gabriel said quietly, aware that dozens of eyes were tracking them, "we need to talk, privately, before this becomes more complicated than it already is." Vaelis nodded, her royal authority reasserting itself enough to command a private chamber. The moment the door sealed, Gabriel turned to Vaelis. "What just happened?" "You can't actually, we're not, there's no. Under Thessar law, I absolutely can and we absolutely are," Vaelis said, her tears still flowing but her voice steady. "A sovereign's public declaration of bonding is legally binding upon pronouncement. There are no conditions, no requirements for noble approval. The moment I said the words in formal context, the bonding became legally established." "But why?" Gabriel asked. "For years you've maintained perfect professional distance. 4 years of never acknowledging anything beyond diplomatic collaboration. Why declare this now, publicly, in a way that creates massive political complications?" Vaelis was quiet, clearly struggling with how much to reveal. "Because I've spent 4 years watching you, working beside you, developing feelings I had no right to have and couldn't acknowledge without abandoning every duty I've been trained to prioritize. I've formed political bonds twice, both times serving imperial interests, both times with people I respected but never loved, both times knowing it was performance rather than genuine connection." "While falling in love with you," Vaelis corrected, her tears intensifying. Slowly, carefully, trying desperately to suppress it because Thessar queens don't bond for personal reasons. We bond for political advantage. Personal desire is irrelevant. Then why break that pattern now? Because 3 days ago, Lord Thuron informed me that the Thessar High Council had arranged a new political bonding for me, to Lord Kevrin of House Thessara, whose alliance would strengthen our position in contested border territories. The arrangement was finalized, the ceremony was scheduled, and I was expected to accept with appropriate political gratitude. Vaelis's voice broke slightly. "And I realized that if I accepted, I'd spend the rest of my life in another political marriage, performing appropriate partnership while watching you from diplomatic distance, knowing I'd chosen duty over the one genuine connection I've ever experienced." "So you publicly declared a bonding that preempts the political arrangement," Gabriel said, understanding crystallizing. "I declared the truth," Vaelis said. "That you're my husband in every way that actually matters, my partner in work, my closest confidant, the person whose opinion I value above any advisor's, the one I trust with vulnerabilities I show no one else. The public declaration just made the existing reality legally binding before political calculation could force me into another arranged alliance." Ambassador Chen requested a private consultation with Gabriel, while Thessar advisors conferred urgently with Vaelis. "Do you have any idea what you've just been claimed into?" Chen asked. "A legally binding Thessar royal bonding that I didn't consent to, that creates massive diplomatic complications, and that apparently makes me the husband of a queen I've been carefully maintaining professional distance from for 4 years." "Accurately summarized," Chen said. "The question is what you want to do about it. Thessar law might consider the bonding binding, but human law would recognize that you didn't consent. We could contest the bonding, potentially extract you from this situation. And if I don't want to be extracted," Gabriel asked quietly. Chen studied him carefully. Do you have feelings for Queen Vaelis? I've spent 4 years trying very hard not to have feelings for Queen Vaelis, Gabriel admitted. Because having those feelings while maintaining professional liaison duties seemed like a catastrophically bad idea. But trying not to have feelings isn't the same as not having them. So when she publicly declared you her husband and then started crying, I realized that she's been doing exactly what I've been doing. Maintaining perfect professional distance while feeling something she couldn't acknowledge. Performing appropriate royal conduct while struggling with genuine emotions that have no place in diplomatic contexts. Gabriel paused. She broke through 4 years of restraint to claim me publicly, knowing it would create massive political complications. That's not impulsive decision. That's someone who reached a breaking point. When Gabriel returned to the main chamber, Vaelis was conferring with Lord Thuron and advisors, her tears finally under control but her expression still showing strain. She looked up when Gabriel entered, something vulnerable in her eyes. Gabriel, I should have consulted you before making that declaration. I acted on impulse and emotion rather than appropriate consideration for your consent. If you want to contest the bonding, I will support that despite the political complications. Do you want me to contest it? Gabriel asked directly. Vaelis was quiet. No, but what I want isn't the only consideration. You've been claimed publicly as my husband without being asked if that's a role you're willing to accept. Your consent matters more than my desire for the bonding to stand. Then here's my consent, Gabriel said, crossing the chamber to stand directly in front of her. Yes, I accept the bonding. Yes, I'm willing to be your husband, with all the political complications and cultural challenges that involves. Yes, I've been carefully not falling in love with you for 4 years because it seemed professionally inappropriate. And yes, watching you cry after finally acknowledging what we've both been suppressing made me realize that maintaining careful distance was hurting both of us. What followed was weeks of intense political negotiation, cultural adjustment, and working through exactly what it meant for a Thessar queen to have publicly bonded with a human liaison. The High Council is demanding explanation for why I chose emotional impulse over political calculation, Vaelis mentioned during one private conversation. Lord Kevrin's house is threatening formal grievance, and several noble houses are questioning whether a queen who bonds with a human has compromised her judgment. Are you having regrets? Gabriel asked. Neither, Vaelis said firmly. I regret the years I spent suppressing genuine feelings. I regret the political marriages that served imperial interests but left me isolated. I don't regret finally acknowledging what you actually mean to me. Why did you cry? Gabriel asked. After the declaration, I've never seen you show that kind of genuine emotion in public before. Because for 4 years I've maintained perfect control, suppressed every personal feeling, performed appropriate royal conduct while dying inside from the isolation it created. When I finally said the words, when I claimed you publicly, all that suppressed emotion just broke through. The relief of finally acknowledging it, the fear that you'd reject the bonding, the accumulated weight of years of restraint, it all came out at once. Or it was human. Well, Thessar, to finally express genuine feeling after years of suppression, Gabriel suggested. You didn't cry because you're unstable. You cried because you'd been holding everything in for so long that finally releasing it was overwhelming. Over the following months, they navigated the complex reality of their bonding, learning to balance Vaelis's political obligations with their personal relationship, managing cultural differences, and gradually building something real from the foundation of 4 years of carefully suppressed connection. The High Council has formally accepted the bonding, Vaelis announced one evening, with significant conditions about maintaining appropriate political judgment, but they've accepted it. How do you feel about that? Relieved, vindicated. Still somewhat terrified. Vaelis smiled slightly. but also genuinely happy for the first time in years. The bonding isn't political performance, it's real. That matters more than I can adequately express. When you declared me your husband and then started crying, I didn't fully understand what it meant, Gabriel said. And now I understand that you were crying because you'd finally broken through years of suppressing genuine feelings for the sake of duty. Because you'd claimed something real after years of political performance. Because you'd chosen personal connection over imperial advantage and didn't know if I'd accept that choice. Gabriel took her hand. Those tears meant something. They meant I mattered enough to you that risking your political standing was preferable to continuing the suppression. That's accurate, Vaelis said quietly. You've always mattered more than appropriate protocol suggested you should. I just finally reached the point where pretending otherwise became impossible. They stood together in Vaelis's private quarters, the political complications mostly resolved, the cultural adjustments ongoing, the future uncertain but no longer constrained by careful distance. The alien queen had seen him, turned to her companions and declared him her husband, then cried tears that revealed years of restraint finally breaking. The declaration had shocked everyone, but it had also created something genuine from years of suppression, recognition of feelings that had existed despite every reason they shouldn't, loyalty that had survived careful professional distance, and love that had finally broken through duty and power to become something they could openly acknowledge.